Hey lovelies, I want to share with you some January favorites. This has actually been a really delicious tarot month, so I've been diving into some really cool older decks, and I got a copy of the Oculi Occultati. This is the Queen of Cups. I'm thinking the Queen of Cups is starting to become a very important card for me. The queens, both the Queen of Cups and the Queen of Pentacles. It turns out that the Queen of Pentacles is my theme card for the year, the Mother of Pentacles, in the Kim Kranz's Wild Unknown deck. Anyway, I have not worked with this deck. I have a bag for it. I'm excited. This deck. Well, you've seen it. You've probably all seen it. So I know Simon was saying that he didn't like, oh, there she is. Oh my God, that he thought the artwork in the minors was sort of more caricature-y or cartoony than the majors, and so I think that kind of compromised his love for the deck, although it was one of his top 5. Yeah, I think the minors are amazing. I love the colors. This deck, I haven't started working with it, as I said, and I'm not exactly sure how I will work with it. It's not a deck that you can really shuffle, but it's, well, it just, the artwork is amazing. The cardstock is also amazing. Everything about it is amazing. It's amazing. So I don't know. So anyway, this is definitely, I hesitate to call it a January favorite. I acquired it this month. I'm loving it up this month, but I haven't started working with it. What I have started working with are 2 vintage decks, one of which is still in print and really well known, which I hadn't gotten into, but the Connelly Tarot. Eileen Connelly's deck that her son, what's her son's name? Peter Paul, did the artwork for. This is a funky deck. I love the Temperance. I mean, the Temperance card is just one of my all-time favorite Temperance cards. The Botticelli imagery of it, it's just, I think it's just beautiful. The thing about this deck, and I've done a number of really interesting readings. Let me see if I can find, some of the cards I just aesthetically, I dislike intensely. The sort of that weird kind of like a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, sort of Hollywood looking medieval aesthetic. Some of the cards though, they're the imagery here. This is a good example. The imagery I don't mind at all, and the imagery is interesting to me. So the Hermit. So this is very much a deck that's about initiation and about the kind of lineage of the initiate receiving knowledge from, the master, whether that's understood in very literal terms, like working with a teacher, or in more sort of esoteric terms of kind of guides and sort of transcendent, ascendant masters. But what I think is interesting is a lot of these cards are about grasping. Literally, you see hands grasping onto staffs. You see a lot of imagery of holding, whether it's the wands or other suits or the major arcana. There's a lot of focus on how the hands grab hold of things. There's also a lot of recognition of kind of the time of transition. So the 2 of Swords specifically, this is 2 versions of the self and our ability to kind of imagine now how we are and what we might be. So there's a sense, like with the Hermit card, there's a sense of how knowledge and wisdom involves, like 2 figures, maybe 2 versions of the self, or the self and another, a teacher, but this sense that we're moving and growing and moving forward, we're reaching and we're grasping. And that sense of grasping knowledge, of holding on to things, and whether we relinquish our grip or we grab hold of something new, it seems, I love this Queen of Swords too. She's so fucking badass. But just that idea of like, I've got it. So I think this is a card that's really about spiritual yearning and about what it means to hold on to things, what it means to not be able to hold on to things because they're like the Eight of Wands. Things are moving too fast. They're in the air. They're in motion. Okay. Like, again, some of the imagery makes me laugh. It's like, Shazam, I am the magician. But it's in a very direct way. These cards are inviting us to explore the way we're reaching, the way we're grasping, the way we're moving forward. Now, I have a vintage deck, so this was one of the 1990s versions of the deck, printed with this kind of cloud marbly backing. Actually the Celtic knot imagery on the newer deck is, I think, pretty. I don't have a new version of the deck, it's me, so if I can find it on eBay in a vintage version, I will. I don't particularly love these backs, but I'm glad to have an older copy of the deck. And I have to say, the coloring, from what I've seen online, the coloring of the older version is much more vivid and bright and jewel tones, and the more recent vintage is a little bit more muted. There's some good comparison videos. I'll see if I can find one and link to it. The little white book is kind of helpful for this deck, actually, as it turns out. So the Connelly Tarot, an oldie, interesting. I've been playing with it. I've been enjoying it. Another oldie, out of print, incredibly common on eBay. So I'd seen this deck on eBay a bazillion times, and I was drawn to the star card, which is the card that's on the tuck box. And so I thought the star card was really pretty, and then I looked at reviews like Eclectic Tarot, the reviews. I think there's some videos of it, and I was like, "Urgh." But I ended up buying it because the price was right. I edged the copy I got. The Vision Tarot came out in, I want to say, the early 90s. Copyright 1995 by Jim Thompson. And it's a Cardamundi deck. The card stock is kind of what we expect from that Belgian. It's sort of slick. It's bendy, but it's nice. The backs look like this. This deck deserves its own video. This is a Marseille style deck, although the imagery, it's like photorealism, photo montage, collage deck, and all of the cards have these sort of elaborate frames, and the frames reflect the suit. And then there's this kind of, you can see it here, the gold Knight of Cups, but then you have the French Chevalier Coupe. So it's like got this double title on each card, and some of it is really freaking goofy with the photo montage. So why do I like this deck? It's too real. You know what I mean? It's like, I like this deck though, and I've had some good readings with it, because as a deck for working with Marseille, with the Marseille system, which I don't believe is a separate system, by the way. I don't think there are several different tarots. There's only the tarot and the different interpretations over the year, whether it's Marseille or Crowley Harris or Waite Smith, or some amalgam thereof. It's one tarot. But if we're working with these sort of Marseille style pip decks, this is a really interesting adjunct, a really interesting deck to work with. That I like the cups a lot. It's some of the cards, I don't know what I like about it yet. I haven't worked with it enough. I've done a few readings. I've found them very helpful, and some of the majors I think are particularly useful. The little white book is really good, actually. It has pretty chunky readings for each of the cards, and it's smart about the pips, in that, let me just find an example, in that it has a kind of breakdown suit by suit. So, you know, talking about the swords aspect of life, medieval class element. It's a little bit literal, like it'll talk about appearance, the cups, blonde or fair hair, blue eyes for the courts. So it's got that kind of traditional, correlating the courts with physical depictions, but I think it's good. I don't know. There's something here. I'll let you know as I work with it more and more, but I'm finding myself drawn toward really working with number and suit and pips in a more concerted way than I ever have. I keep wanting to really dive into that, and I'm realizing that to do so requires having a bunch of different decks to work with. So I've dug out my Pagan Otherworlds deck, which I haven't really worked with in a year, as a deck that I think I'm going to work with alongside the Vision Tarot to really think about the pips in a concerted way. Anyway, this star card is just beautiful. Other favorites. I've continued to be working with the Tarot of Reflections, continued to be really in love with this deck. I did a client reading with it, and although the cards are small, so it's a little bit hard for clients to dive into, I found it really powerful. We ended up, because it really helped illuminate some of the more hidden and shadowy aspects of what the person was going through. So continued to work with that. I got a copy of the Millennium Tarot de Marseille. So again, this sort of goal of working with the pips. I'm intrigued by the artist's desire to look at sacred geometry. I don't know how deep that is. The aspect ratio of the cards, they're taller and thinner than other Marseille decks like the CBD or the Hodorovsky Camoin, or certainly any of the Noblet or the Dodal, the Type 1 reproductions that I have by Fleur Noir. So far I'm intrigued. I'll let you know how it evolves. The colors are interesting and more vibrant, and as I was saying, the aspect ratio, which I think is a reflection of the idea of there being a kind of sacred geometry in this deck, is interesting to me, but I haven't explored it yet enough to know if there's anything there or it's just goofy. There's a PDF that you can download that's short, but then there's this Sacred Code of Tarot book, which I don't know if I'm going to get, because the PDF that offers a kind of preview of what's in that book, I can't tell if I can't tell if there's something there yet. I have to explore it more. So I imagine there will be a future video on this. And the last thing I wanted to share, this was my what do I want to call it? My win? That's not the word I'm looking for. Anyway, this was this exciting thing I got today. Not today, this month. This is the earlier Los Scarabeo version. I think maybe even the first version, and this is with a Spanish, this was a Spanish edition, so it's the Minchiate Florentinas, but it's the same Florentine Minchiate that emerges in this newer Los Scarabeo, Minchiate Etruria. This I found to be a pretty disappointing edition of this deck. It's okay. The cardstock, it's okay. It's okay. Every time I take it out, I'm like, oh, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. But there's something about the cardstock that I don't like. And the version I got, for some reason, instead of getting a, where is this? Instead of getting a Knight of Wands, I got two Knight of Swords. So I've written both Lo Scarabeo and Llewellyn to their customer service to say, you know, I got 2 Knights of Swords. Much as I like the badass centaur with his sword held aloft, I would like to have the knight that goes with this queen. Thank you very much. What else do I want to say? Oh, okay. So I got distracted because I just got a text. Goofy me. So this is the same deck, I think, that came in. I'll see if I can drop a picture of the later Lo Scarabeo, the box version of the Minchiate that has a book with it. This, I think, was the first way that deck came out, just in a tuck box of its own. It is, again, the same deck as this, the early 19th century Minchiate Etruria, or Florentine Minchiate. And you can find these on eBay in North America for super expensive. I don't know, I mean, everything is expensive. Or you can go to sites like Todo Colecciones, which is a site I first heard about through Kasha Tarot Map. And it's just a Spanish eBay site, basically. And often you can get these decks that are hard to get in North America. You can get them for like 12 or 15 euros. And then even with shipping to North America, since we kind of do well with customs, it ends up being maybe 30 bucks for the whole thing, which is well worth it. So again, this is the same deck. The back is the same, isn't it? Yeah. Right? The same deck, but the coloring's a little bit different. And this is pretty. I like this peach. And the size is different. So these are larger cards. The card stock in this is it's not so, this is actually slightly thicker card stock. Can you see that? In the new edition. But maybe it's just because the cards are bigger that it feels more like a typical Llewellyn or Lo Scarabeo card. And yeah, and I just love it. So I'm now set up with my historical Minchiate deck, which will allow me to do the study of the Minchiate that I've been wanting to do, which will also bring me back to the Spolia Tarot and just thinking about Minchiate in general. So now I have this little one that has that I'm not in love with. I have my bigger one, and then I have Brian Williams. Sorry, I just moved my light, so now I'm in shadow. Brian Williams Minchiate Tarot with his really comprehensive book and his hand-drawn deck, which is not so exciting, but the book itself is well worth the cost of admission. So these are my January favorites in under 20 minutes. Okay, thank you guys for watching, and over and out. See you later.